He left me to care for his dying father while he chased fame in Los Angeles with a 23-year-old influencer. Wait until he learns who his father just rewrote his will for. The day Thomas decided to change his will was the same day Mark posted a glitzy engagement announcement on Instagram, not even bothering to call his father. I held Thomas as he wept, not from the lung cancer eating him away, but from a deeper wound, the death of a father's hope for his son. Before we dive in, thank you for joining this journey of courage and heart. If these stories move you, hit subscribe, it's free and helps us build a community of inspiration. Now, let's begin. I'm Anna, Thomas's caregiver in Seattle. That morning, autumn light filtered through the hospital curtains in Thomas's bedroom, casting shadows on his oxygen machine. He'd had a good day, managing a bit of oatmeal, his pain under control. I was adjusting his blanket when our phones buzzed with Mark's post. She said yes. Sunset proposal in LA with my queen, Chloe. Wedding planned soon. The photo showed Mark, tanned and grinning, kneeling before a young woman in a sparkling dress, a diamond ring flashing. Thomas's tablet slipped from his trembling hands. I caught it, but not his breaking heart. He used to tell me everything first, Thomas whispered, his voice cracking. His first poem, his first job, his dreams. His fingers traced the quilt I draped over him. I sold my library to fund his film school. He promised to make me proud. I sat beside him, silent, as his eyes fixed on the screen, hurt hardening into resolve. Anna, call my lawyer, David. I need to see him today. I expected him to call Mark, to beg for a visit. Instead, he said, it's time I write my own ending. That moment, I knew Thomas wasn't just a dying professor, he was a father about to teach his son a lesson that would echo beyond his final days. Stick with me, this story's just getting started. 3 months ago, I moved into Thomas's Seattle home to care for him full-time. Mark, my partner of 5 years, had already left for Los Angeles, chasing a directing career with stars in his eyes. Thomas, a retired literature professor, had been diagnosed with lung cancer a year earlier, and his condition was worsening. I'd promised to stay, thinking Mark would too. But as Thomas's health declined, Mark's visits dwindled. He'd call sporadically, always rushed, promising to come soon. Soon never came. Thomas was more than my partner's father, he was my mentor. When I met him, I was a struggling nursing student, and he'd sit me down with cups of tea, sharing stories of Shakespeare and Austen, teaching me life through literature. Stories show us who we are, he'd say, his eyes bright despite his cough. He'd hoped Mark would follow his path, maybe teach or write, but Mark wanted fame, Hollywood lights, not lecture halls. Thomas sold his prized book collection to fund Mark's film school, believing in his son's dreams. He'll tell stories that matter, Thomas told me, smiling. But Mark's stories became Instagram reels, not films. Mark's posts grew flashier, yacht parties, red carpets, Chloe by his side in designer dresses. Living my best life #Hollywood dreams, he'd caption, while I adjusted Thomas's oxygen mask. Thomas would scroll through Mark's feed, his face a mix of pride and pain. He used to read poetry with me, he said one night, showing me a photo of a young Mark reciting Frost at a school event. I thought he'd come back. I'd nod, hiding my own hurt. Mark hadn't just left Thomas, he'd left me, too, promising we'd figure it out once he made it. Last month, during a rough chemo session, I called Mark 7 times. No answer. His assistant texted, he's in a meeting. Later, Chloe posted a photo of them at a rooftop bar, captioned, celebrating Mark's big break. Thomas saw it and turned away, his silence louder than any words. That's when he first mentioned the will. Anna, he said, his voice steady despite his frailty, I've been teaching stories my whole life. It's time Mark learns about consequences. I didn't know what he meant then, but I felt the weight of it. His heart was breaking, but his mind was sharp, plotting a final lesson. Keep watching, this is where the real story begins. Every day, I lived 2 lives, nurse and daughter, caregiver and confidant. Thomas's Seattle home became my world, mornings spent checking vitals, managing meds, evenings reading Dickens by his bedside. Thomas, frail but sharp, would smile and say, "You're my Jane Eyre, Anna, steady in the storm." Meanwhile, Mark's life in Los Angeles sparkled online, Chloe's Instagram flooded with posts of them at premieres, captioned #powercouple #chasingdreams. Each post was a knife, not just to Thomas, but to me. I'd been Mark's partner, yet he hadn't called me in weeks. Thomas's pain wasn't just physical. He'd scroll through Chloe's stories, seeing Mark laugh on yachts while his oxygen tank hissed. "I sold my first editions for him," he'd say, his voice hollow. He was going to tell stories, not live them on a screen. I'd hold his hand, silent, as he grieved the son he'd lost to fame. One night, after a bad day of coughing fits, he showed me a photo of Mark at 10, holding a poetry book. "He wrote a sonnet for my birthday once," Thomas said. "Now he doesn't even call." The will came up again one rainy afternoon. Thomas, propped up in his armchair, called for his lawyer, David. "I want to rewrite it," he said, his eyes fierce. "Mark's made his choices. I need to honor mine." I stayed as David arrived, his briefcase heavy with papers. Thomas didn't ask me to leave. "Anna, you're family now," he said. "You've been here, not him." He outlined his plan. His estate, his home, savings, and book royalties would fund a community literary center, not Mark's Hollywood dreams. I was stunned. "You've shown up, Anna," he said. "That's what family does." Mark's absence grew louder. His texts were shallow, "Hope Dad's okay, super busy with a new project." While Chloe posted about their engagement party, captioned #foreverlove. Thomas stopped responding to Mark's messages, instead sharing stories with me, his teaching days, students who'd found purpose in his classes. "Literature teaches consequences," he said one evening, pausing to catch his breath. Mark's writing his own tragedy. I felt anger rising, not just at Mark, but at myself for believing he'd come back. Yet Thomas's resolve steadied me. He wasn't giving up, he was rewriting his legacy. Stay tuned, this story's about to take a sharp turn. As Thomas's condition worsened, Seattle's community stepped in where Mark stepped out. Neighbors brought soups, former students sent letters, and Dr. Patel, Thomas's oncologist, lingered after visits to discuss poetry. "You're not alone," they'd tell Thomas, filling his home with warmth. I'd watch him smile, his eyes bright despite the pain, as he read letters from students he'd inspired decades ago. "Dear Professor, your class made me a writer," one read. Thomas would nod, saying, "This is legacy, Anna, not Hollywood lights." Mark's absence became glaring. His post showed him and Chloe at influencer events, captioned #livinglarge. Meanwhile, medical bills piled up, and Mark's promised contribution stopped. I called his assistant, who stammered, "Mark's tied up with investments." Investments meant Chloe's new vlog, Chloe's LA life, flaunting their penthouse. One post showed Thomas's antique desk, a gift from his mother, now in their living room. "This old thing's so vintage," Chloe giggled on a live stream. "We're painting it gold." Thomas's face hardened. "That desk held my lecture notes for 30 years, he said. "Now it's a prop." The community rallied harder. Sarah, a former colleague, brought books for Thomas to read aloud, his voice weak but steady. The Wilsons, neighbors, tended his garden, planting roses he loved. David, the lawyer, visited weekly, documenting Mark's neglect, missed calls, ignored texts, and timestamps of Chloe's posts during Thomas's worst days. "This isn't revenge," David said, organizing records. "It's justice for Thomas's choices." I felt a fire growing in me, anger at Mark's betrayal, but Thomas's calm resolve kept me grounded. "He'll learn," Thomas said, "but not from me preaching. From consequences." One evening, Thomas asked me to record a video. "For the will reading," he said, his voice firm. "I want Mark to hear me." He spoke into my phone, listing every missed moment, his words sharp but loving. "This isn't punishment, Mark," he said. "It's recognition of who showed up." I saved the video, my hands shaking, knowing this was his final act. The community's support made it possible, each visitor, each letter, a testament to the family Thomas had built. Mark's world was about to unravel, and we were ready. Don't look away, this is where it gets real. Thomas's final weeks were a race against time. His breathing grew labored, but his mind stayed sharp, focused on his last lesson. One foggy morning, he called David and me to his bedside. "I'm ready to sign," he said, his voice a whisper but his eyes fierce. The will was complete, his home and savings would fund a literary center for Seattle's youth, with me as its director. "You've been my family, Anna," he said, gripping my hand. "Promise you'll see this through, not for revenge, but for love." I nodded, tears burning. "I promise, Thomas." Mark called that day, his voice breezy. "Hey, how's Dad? Chloe and I are planning the wedding, big LA bash." I glanced at Thomas, struggling to breathe, and said, "He needs you here, Mark. Now." He promised to come soon, but Chloe's next post showed them at a beach club, captioned #weddingvibes. Thomas saw it and turned away. "He's made his choice," he said. That night, he recorded one last video, his voice breaking but clear. "Mark, love means showing up. I hope you learn that someday." The community kept us strong. Sarah read poetry to Thomas, the Wilsons brought roses, and Dr. Patel adjusted his meds with care. David finalized the will, documenting Mark's absence with precision, texts, posts, missed payments. "It's airtight," David said. "Thomas's legacy is safe." I felt the weight of my promise as Thomas weakened. Mark texted he'd arrive in 2 days, but I knew it might be too late. The stage was set for a reckoning. "Keep watching, it's about to unfold." Thomas passed quietly that night, his hand in mine, as rain tapped the windows. Mark arrived the next day, Chloe filming their #grief journey at the airport. In Thomas's room, Mark froze, seeing the cards and flowers from neighbors, not him. "We're here now," Chloe said, her voice rehearsed for her vlog. Thomas's silence answered louder than words. The will reading was set for 3 days after the funeral, in David's office. Thomas had planned it carefully, wanting Mark to face his choices. The room was packed, Sarah, the Wilsons, Dr. Patel, and me, all silent as Mark and Chloe entered, dressed in designer black. Chloe held her phone, ready to capture #familylegacy. David started with Thomas's video. "Mark," Thomas's voice filled the room, "you chose fame over family. I sold my books for your dreams, but you forgot mine." He listed every missed call, every post from LA while Thomas suffered. Chloe's phone dropped to her lap, her face pale. Mark stared at the floor. David read the will. Thomas's home and savings went to a literary center, with me as director. A small trust was left for Mark's future children, if any, but nothing else. "This is outrageous," Mark shouted. "I'm his son." David calmly presented records, unpaid bills, ignored texts, Chloe's posts timestamped during Thomas's chemo. "It's legal," David said. "Thomas chose his family." Mark turned to me, eyes blazing. "You did this." I met his gaze. "You did, Mark. Every time you chose LA." The room held its breath as he stormed out, Chloe scrambling to follow. Thomas's lesson had landed, hard. "Stay with us, the legacy's just beginning." Mark tried to contest the will, hiring lawyers with his dwindling funds, but David's work was ironclad. Chloe's vlog imploded as followers turned on her, calling out their absence during Thomas's illness. #toxic couple trended, and their LA penthouse deal fell through. I poured myself into Thomas's vision, turning his home into the Thomas Reed Literary Center. The library, once filled with his books, became a haven for kids to write and read, mentored by Sarah and volunteers. The Wilsons' roses bloomed in a garden where families found peace. A year later, Mark sent a letter, no lawyer's seal, just shaky handwriting. "Anna, I saw the center's website. You've made Dad's dream real. I was wrong about everything. He'd started therapy, left Chloe, and moved to a small Seattle apartment. "I'm trying to be the son he deserved," he wrote. I placed the letter in Thomas's desk, now in my office, and smiled. Thomas's lesson wasn't revenge, it was redemption. The center thrived, featured in local papers for its impact. Kids wrote stories inspired by Thomas's teachings, their voices echoing his. Mark began volunteering, reading to students, his Hollywood flash gone. One evening, he paused by Thomas's portrait. "He believed in second chances," he said. I nodded. He believed in love. The center wasn't just a building, it was Thomas's heart, beating through us all. I thought family was blood, but Thomas taught me it's who shows up. His final lesson wasn't about punishing Mark, it was about love, accountability, and choosing what matters. I'm no longer just a caregiver, I'm a keeper of his legacy, building a place where stories heal. You have a story, too. What's the lesson you're learning, the choice you're afraid to make? Share it in the comments. Let's inspire each other to live with heart, to show up for those who need us. Hit subscribe for more stories of love, loss, and second chances. It's free, and together, we'll keep Thomas's light shining. Don't wait for permission to be your true self, start now.